Dear Anthony and Joe. Hi, welcome to Superhero Rundown. I'm Crimson, and today I'll be telling you why you failed women. You do this thing where women have fake agency. Pepper not wanting Tony on Ebony Maw's ship, but is ignored. Gamora telling the Guardians about Thanos' apparent fetish for killing half the population of the universe planet by planet, but they don't really take her seriously. It's hollow, because you only focus on the men, and when you do focus on women, it falls short. So in this letter, I'm going to be explaining the 6 main women that have the most screen time and why I'm pissed about them. Maybe then you'll see why, even though Endgame and Infinity War are major accomplishments, it doesn't excuse the fact that it was done at the expense of the women in the film. Shuri was so good in Black Panther, but in Infinity War, she's relegated to a few lines and to helping Vision. Which is good that she can outdo Bruce Banner in intellect, but she's knocked unconscious and then wiped when Thanos does the snap. When she comes back, she's standing next to T'Challa and is in the really lackluster All the Women shot, but we don't see her do anything else. It's so disappointing. Carol, as our Captain Marvel, didn't really participate in Infinity War, but for a small cameo at the end. Then, when she comes back in Endgame, she only really is in the movie for about 3 minutes, if that. She brings Tony and Nebula home to the Avengers, then she's off-world for most of the film. When she does show up for the final fight, it's great that she destroys Thanos' ship and goes toe-to-toe with him, but she was hyped as the big gun that can go against Thanos, a one-woman army. Instead, we get this shot of all the women, and she has the gauntlet, but she doesn't even need the women to get the gauntlet where it needs to go. And when she goes toe-to-toe with Thanos having the gauntlet, she does hold her own against him for about 5 seconds until he uses the Power Stone to knock her out. It would have been so much cooler if she could actually be what she was advertised as, the one-woman army. She doesn't need anyone else, but here, it feels like just a footnote in the climax of a movie. And I didn't even like Captain Marvel, but that is not how you utilize a woman that has been hyped up for over a year. In Avengers Endgame's Women Deserved More, Alex Kranz puts Captain Marvel in the grand scheme of the greater tableau of the movie. The point that drove this home for me was actually a moment I've seen praised by others. Captain Marvel returns from her 2-hour hiatus in the film to collect the Infinity Gauntlet from Peter Parker. Sure, he and the audience just saw her destroy Thanos' ship in a heartbeat, but he still asks how she'll get through an entire army to deliver the gauntlet to where it needs to be. We then get a big splashy shot of almost every single woman in the film, chest puffed out heroically and lit by a murky sun through a cloud of debris. There are so many women, and among them are the 2 most powerful characters in the film not named Thanos. But it's just a brief shot, one that feels more like someone meeting out a diversity cookie than lifting up a group of characters who almost always take a back seat in both the film's narrative and its marketing. Ultimately, the women do little more than look cool and buy some time before Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor can do the real work. And there's a pointed absence from the tableau. The original woman Avenger, Black Widow, isn't there. She died an hour earlier. I'll address my problems with Natasha later in this letter, but for now, yeah, not really seeing how this makes Captain Marvel strong if she's part of a not one-woman army. Gamora. Let's talk about what you did to Gamora, Russo brothers. I'm pissed, and I'll tell you why. Gamora is supposed to be the fiercest woman in the galaxy. The flashback was actually a good idea. You showed Thanos taking her away from the carnage and have her concentrate on a perfectly balanced dagger and show she still has it. Then she asks Quill to kill her since she knows about something that Thanos needs. He promises, but not without hesitation. When they get to nowhere to get the Reality Stone, Thanos already has it and uses it to let Gamora stab him in the neck and kill him. But that's the illusion. Thanos captures her and takes her to his ship. Gamora has the resource talk, and if you want to know how stupid that is, you can pause this video and go to this one. After that, she's convinced by torture of Nebula to take Thanos to Vormir. On Vormir, they are confronted by the Red Skull, who tells them that the stone demands a sacrifice. Gamora laughs because it's a love sacrifice, and she thinks he doesn't love anything, which he doesn't because it was abuse. Gamora thinks that the universe told him no, but the movie makes it seem that Thanos loves her. She tries to kill herself, but to no avail. We're going to talk about fridging, because apparently the two of you don't know about it or are okay with it, which is not good in the slightest. For those of you also watching this public letter, the trope of women in refrigerators gets its name from Green Lantern number 54, where Kyle Rayner comes home to find his girlfriend Alexandra cut into pieces and left in the fridge for him to find her. He's motivated by anger and grief as he pursues and battles the killer, Major Force. The term women in refrigerators was coined by the legendary comic book writer and tour de force on Twitter, Gail Simone. The term is shorthand for a long-standing tradition in storytelling history of patriarchal societies where women are either the motivation for or the goal of a man's journey. Translation? It's why Quill is an asshole and wrecks shit on Titan. Not only because he's written as a petulant child, but because he also fits the trope along with Thanos himself. Some have made the argument that women in refrigerators also happens to male characters, but in Women in Refrigerators Killing Females in Comics, Aaron Hatch explains. The counter-argument made against women in refrigerators is that it symbolizes how women are victims in real life, and the writers are just commentating on this issue in their stories. True, we do live in a day and age where a lot of women have become victims to despicable men, and it is important to reflect ongoing issues in day-to-day life. However, the problem with this argument is that most stories involving women in refrigerators do not really have anything profound to say about female violence. The story's themes are not really centered around female violence, and female characters are killed or maimed simply to invoke shock into the reader. Getting back to Infinity War, I suppose you could argue that abusers love their victims in a sick sort of way, and that makes you terrifyingly gross and wrong, and I fear for your families. But you fridge Gamora when Thanos sacrifices her and gets the stone. So fuck you. You killed the fiercest woman in the universe to perpetuate and attempt to validate an abuse narrative. This is why this movie is terrible. And yes, this does outweigh the witty banter. This movie has consequences, and not just for those in the Battle of Wakanda, but also to get the stones. So don't tell me that it's okay to fridge a woman to advance a man's story. They don't get the glove on Titan because of this scene. She dies, and Thanos gets the Soul Stone. Die mad about it, nerds! This is an abuse narrative, and it's disgusting. It's worse for poor Nebula. Nebula had a good standing with Gamora at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which was great. It showed a great character arc and growth for both of them. Then Infinity War happens. The first time we see her, she's on Thanos' ship getting tortured so Thanos can get information on the Soul Stone from Gamora. On Titan, she tells Quill that he sacrificed Gamora for the Soul Stone, causing the Avengers to lose when Quill tries to yell and cry about it at Thanos. She and Tony are the only survivors on Titan. Captain Marvel rescues them, but she and Rocket go to other places in the universe to deal with what's been happening. When the Avengers get back together for the time heist, she and Rhodey go to Morag to retrieve the Power Stone. She gets captured, and her 2014 counterpart takes her place in the present. She's tortured. Again. It's quite annoying at this point. She doesn't have a purpose in this movie other than to get tortured and pushed around. And she shows up for the final fight, but Russos, you didn't really give her a lot to work with. Alex Kranz tells us exactly what's up with Nebula and Endgame in his article, Avengers Endgame's Women Deserved Better. With Black Widow dead halfway through the film, it's up to Nebula to carry the torch for all women. At least until that diversity cookie moment we already talked about. She is the de facto lead female character of the film. She is also notably not mentioned once in McFeely and Marcus's New York Times interview. Nebula is basically the cosmic version of Black Widow, a morally gray assassin who has a lot of red in her ledger who doesn't return from the time heist. Only she's a cyborg. And like Natasha in Age of Ultron, Nebula spends a healthy chunk of Endgame captured by the bad guy and subject to monologues. As the men build an Infinity Gauntlet and fight over who will wear it, the real Nebula is interrogated and tortured, while her past doppelganger toddles around in the present day, where none of the men notice that she has a different arm. Perhaps it is a commentary on the failure of all male heroes to consider the women in their midst, but more likely it was a choice by the filmmakers. Past Nebula needed to make sure her father time-traveled to the future, so none of the men could notice she had a flesh arm when earlier she had a metal one. And that's the other thing. How in the fuck did Captain America, the guy who immediately realized something wasn't right when he woke up in the present, how did Captain America not notice the arm? I think Kranz is right. It was more a choice of the filmmakers to not have the characters notice. But it's terrible storytelling. Speaking of terrible storytelling, let's talk about Wanda and how you did her dirty. Wanda had so much potential and you wasted it. It's so frustrating. Wanda is with Vision in Scotland. She wants to be with him. She sees New York is attacked and Tony's missing. But when Vision is attacked, Wanda gets to show off her powers. How strong she is, what she can do, how she can fly, healing Vision's wound. She goes toe-to-toe with Proxima Midnight and holds her own for the most part. Wanda stays up in the tower with Shuri during the fight. Why? Because she can destroy Vision's stone. Vision wants it destroyed, but Wanda doesn't even want to think about that. Scarlet Witch notices the next phase of the battle happening and goes down to help, leaving Vision and Shuri alone. Wanda shows off her powers again, and Okoye asks, what the fuck? Which is appropriate. We've seen what she can do. Why is she not on the front lines? Proxima lets her companion know Wanda's on the field, and Shuri gets knocked unconscious. Wanda, Okoye, and Nat all face Proxima. It would be a cool fight if it didn't last less than 1 minute. The Avengers converge on Vision, and Wanda starts to destroy the stone, though she doesn't wish to. She holds Thanos back while destroying the stone. After destroying it, Thanos turns back time with the Time Stone and takes the stone anyway. Then Thanos snaps and Wanda is wiped away. My problem with this is that only the original Avengers and Rhodey survived the wipe. It would have been so much cooler to have Wanda survive. Then she could have had all the fallout from losing Vision actually explored. She could have been stronger for it, especially if the plan was to bring everyone back except Vision. Because Vision not coming back could have made the scene she has with Thanos all the more powerful. Wanda confronts Thanos. But again, she was wiped, so it has no arc. Although I will say that Wanda is the only one who got him to want to sacrifice his troops by raining fire down on the field. So kudos there. Black Widow, however, was done the dirtiest, and I am so upset by that. And I can't even believe that was a thing that happened. In Infinity War, she gets to show her chops against the children of Thanos, and she scolds Wanda, but that's stuff she does in other movies. Black Widow is part of the main fight with the women against Proxima Midnight, but her main arc, or lack thereof, actually starts in Endgame. Hey, Anthony and Joe, by the way, where was Valkyrie at the beginning of Infinity War? I'm asking for a friend. My friend is women. You know, the people you shafted while you were making these movies. In Endgame, Natasha tells the team that Thanos succeeded in wiping out 50% of all living creatures. After Thor kills Thanos on the garden, Natasha holds the remaining Avengers together however she can. And she does it by herself, as Tony retired to a cabin in the woods, and Cap has been doing what he can to help the survivors. And avoid the Avengers, I guess. Rhodey tells Nat about Clint in Mexico. She asks him to find out where he'll be next so she can deal with it, maybe? Cap comes to visit her and tries to cheer her up. She questions what will happen if she moves on from the Avengers and tells Steve that she's leading the Avengers because they're family and she's better because of them. She's still trying to be better. Nat goes to Tokyo to get Clint. Nat is not surprised by his killing spree, and Clint is unsurprised she's there. Nat tells him killing won't bring his family back. Clint doesn't want Hope, but Nat brings him home for the time heist. They get ready for it, and Nat is one of only 2 women going. And those 2 seem to be the only women left on the planet. We all know how long that's gonna last. Clint and Nat go to Vormir to get the Soul Stone and get confronted by Red Skull. Red Skull explains the sacrifice of the Soul Stone. Nat deduces that Thanos sacrificed Gamora. Which, again, not love, but okay, Anthony and Joe. Nat and Clint decide they're going to sacrifice themselves, but Natasha is trying to save Clint because he has a family to go back to if they win. But here's the thing. Nat kept the Avengers going. Without her, this time heist would have never happened because everyone was living life or murdering people. They fight and try to one-up each other, but in the end, Nat sacrifices herself. She assures Clint it's for the best and lets go. It's like because she can't have kids, she's expendable. And that's not okay. Women have value whether they can have kids or not, Anthony and Joe. Man, it's like a bunch of dudes directed this movie. Oh, wait. My good friend Alex Kranz also covers this in his article. After performing little more than a cameo in Infinity War, Natasha shows up in Endgame as a woman haunted by her failures and desperate to protect what little of humanity remains. While the men of the Avengers have gone off to find themselves, or a family, or a six-pack of beer, she's hunkered down and built a network of remaining heroes, which is pretty great. She's the only Avenger really doing something. And when they decide to get the band back together so they can quantum tunnel their way into the past to save the universe, she's the one who volunteers to pick up Hawkeye, who has gone full edgelord and is murdering his way through other nations, ostensibly to stop criminals who were randomly lucky enough to survive the end of Infinity War. Hawkeye winds up being Black Widow's partner for the time heist, and the two head to Vormir, where last we saw Thanos sacrificing Gamora to track it down. They soon realize the only way to claim the stone is for one of them to sacrifice that which they love most. One would presume Hawkeye would be all out of sacrifices. That which he loves most is his family, and they all got snapped away in the first 2 minutes of the movie. In fact, his whole story until this point is that he's a man with nothing left to lose. And you would assume Natasha, who was visibly upset by Hawkeye's descent into darkness, cares enough about him that he could, maybe, be the thing she loves most. But the film kills Black Widow instead. The scene plays as if it's two friends trying to sacrifice themselves so the other doesn't die. But in an interview with the New York Times, screenwriters Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely make it clear that Natasha really wanted to die because she wanted to see all her Avenger boys happy. Her journey, in our minds, had come to an end if she could get the Avengers back, McFeely said. So you guys had her fridge herself? That's worse! You literally had her kill herself to advance the plot of Men. What the fuck? Also, can we be real here? When Clint returns, they have a moment, but it's not much more than that. It's a sentence or two. For the person who kept the Avengers together. Clint explains that the Soul Stone sacrifice can't be undone. Clint and Cap are the only ones who really mourn her. Cap sheds tears and Clint yells at the Avengers. Hulk throws the bench, but not much else happens. Kranz goes on. Halfway through Endgame, the founding female member of the Avengers is dead, with zero resolution of any of her stories. Presumably, the many unanswered questions of her past will be addressed in her solo movie, but also presumably that movie will be a flashback. That's a bitter pill to swallow, and it's made even more bitter when a morose Hawkeye returns to the present alone, and you realize the only two characters who don't make it out of the past are also the only two female members of the team. Which again, that's not progressive, that's regressive. Black Widow, in contrast, seems to hit all the female obligations of superhero tales. To be no fun, yearn romantically, then die, arguably so a man can find happiness. In the rare moments when the female heroes who have been afforded a non-sourpuss personality in other movies show up, Captain Marvel, Valkyrie, Okoye, Shuri, they don't get to show it. Gamora, Scarlet Witch, and the Wasp may not have a sense of humor, a lack that is frankly the most dehumanizing trait a writer can give a character, but at least they've got backstories as superpowered beings. The presupposition that we're supposed to salute fifth-build characters like Mantis and Pepper Potts just for showing up demonstrates how deep Marvel had to dig to come up with these ostensible triumphs of feminism, which Inku Kang explains in The worst scene in Endgame is the one that's supposed to be the most feminist. Anthony and Joe, you shafted all the women in this movie in one form or another. Little screen time, fridging, cutting off arcs, having a scene where it's not actually cool just to get brownie points. It's gross. Stop it. And the worst part? Black Widow didn't even get a funeral. She sacrificed everything, and you motherfuckers weren't decent enough to give her a funeral. You couldn't put her cuffs on the little flower boat with the old arc reactor? Her gun? A hair tie? Anything? Fuck, what a crock! I can at least say this about the Wonder Woman movie. It's actually feminist. Which isn't to say you didn't get anything right. I mean, you excelled at what you're good at. Captain America and Iron Man.